up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Who Bronché, the podcast where we have all of the conversations that are not always welcome at the dinner table, but at the brunch table, anything goes. And this week, I am thrilled for our guest. They are someone who just came straight from my heart. And I knew them before I actually met them in real life and didn't make the connection right away, but instantly, beyond the work that we had done with each other prior, I felt such a strong kinship with them and really felt like I reconnected with a sibling from another lifetime that I just had not met yet, and have had the opportunity to be in a container with them where, yes, there is community, but we have been able to really find community with each other in a very special way within that container. And that has really felt special and is something that I truly honor. And they're just so smart and they have so much light, and everything that they bring their thoughts to always just opens up a whole new side and perspective for me. And as somebody who prides themselves of thinking that I know and understand all perspectives, this person really, really gives me so much to learn and think about, and I deeply appreciate that. So, Boo, who the fuck are you?
Oh. Who am I? Who am I today? What am I doing today? Why am I here today? The first word I ever learned how to spell was love. And right now I'm working on being a peaceful warrior.
Peaceful warriors. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I love that
Girl,
phrase.
I'm trying to figure it out.
Got me.
I'm like, okay, you're angry. Let's figure out how to channel this anger. So you alchemize it and you use it for something that is an act of warriorship, but, peaceful.
Yeah, I really love that because I think that there, especially in these days when there's plenty to be angry about, there's also the voices of, and I'm guilty of this, right? The people who are like, ground yourself, figure out what works for you and align. And it's like, that is all super valuable and true. But also, what do I do with my rage? Where does it go? And we know that art is an outlet for that. And you yourself are a filmmaker, a writer, a performer, right? And so I wonder, does that feel sufficient? Because I know for me, sometimes people are like, yeah, write it out and burn the paper, and that paper be burnt. And I'm like, I'm still mad. So I'm curious for you, did you feel like art is a sufficient outlet for your rage?
It's interesting because I think for the longest time it was a sufficient outlet, and I think in this moment where artists are silenced and have been, since the strike. I remember during the strike saying, well, we know where things are heading, because if they want us quiet now, they're going to want to keep us quiet for the next, whatever they're going to try and create, which I think will probably look like a lot of military, a lot of police, a lot of rigidity in cinema and television. I think those are going to be the stories that we're going to start to see. So I feel like a fire lit under my ass to reach out to other artists and be like, hey, I know you write about this thing, or I know you talk about this thing. Like, how can I encourage you in this moment? So I think it's twofold, right? Like, I don't usually write stories about my rage. That's what's coming out. I just have to be responsible with it. I think also being responsible in this moment when so many artists are struggling or don't have the means to really share or express their rage, or their rage is being tempered by an institution. I feel it's my job as a community member to then say, don't let them take your voice from you. Even if it's just us in somebody's apartment, we got to get it out. So that's sort of where my headspace goes when you ask me that. But I haven't figured out all of the ways to channel my rage outside of writing, performing when I can, but also just going to the gym, taking a walk, meeting up with other people.
Yeah, I love that. And I even love that you surface, even if it's someone's apartment. I have been preaching this so much lately where I'm like, y'all are worried, especially with the NEA grants and everything that's happening. I'm like, you guys are worried. We used to sit around in community anywhere. Like there's something to that root. And I'm not trying to make us like go back in reverse all of the beautiful ways that having stages and technical arts, right? That amplify our work, like all of that stuff matters. But like at the core of all of that is always the story. And so, and the performers, right? The people who bring it to life. And it's like those two things don't require all of those extra elements that then end up having a say, well, we need more money. Like if you are telling a story in order to release rage or to even spread light, right? Because I think that there's a way in which even rageful work can be a beacon of light, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
people who actually do not find words for their rage. And so just even to put it into words for someone won't like egg them on to be like, now I'm more angry and like we're not transmuting anything. It might actually be the opposite. It might be like, wow, I can breathe. Like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm not crazy. And so sometimes gathering and, you know, having a little slam in someone's apartment, even if it's just 20 people in the room, like 20 people walking around with better attitudes creates 20 different catalysts the next day that can go a different way than they would have if they did not have that transformative experience or see a way in which they can embody something. So I hear what you're saying, and I second that. I second that. So I want to move us into our brunch questions. I don't know how much of a brunch person you are, but I am curious, when you do go to brunch, what is your favorite brunch plate?
Depends on where I'm at, honestly. I haven't been to brunch in a while. I had a birthday brunch and everybody got really, really lit. And I was like, and they were like, why did you choose brunch then? I was like, well, I don't really drink like that. So I didn't know. I think I'm just a breakfast person. Like I would say my house is stocked with, I have a muffin right here. I can make pancakes if I want. I have eggs. I have everything to make a quiche. Um, I just love breakfast. So it depends on my mood. If there's an omelet, let's go. If there's, you know, a little somebody wants to split pancakes on the side, like let's do it. Coffee, keep it coming, you know? Like it's just the possibilities are endless.
I love a quiche. I do love a quiche. Like you said quiche, and like literally now I'm like, I want a quiche. And splitting pancakes always, or French toast, you know. I love waffles, but like they're not, if I had to tier the three, they're at the bottom tier between pancakes and French toast,
And
for sure.
honestly, I'm not even not to be like, oh my God, I'm about to like out myself as a Filipino. Okay, look, like for real, like if you're gonna have waffles, put some fried chicken on it. And I don't even eat chicken, but
Yeah.
like honestly, waffles belong to fried chicken.
That combination is just really, it's masterful. It is a masterful combination for sure. And there was this restaurant in Harlem back in the day. I cannot remember the name of it, but it was a Caribbean brunch spot. And for the first time, I had fish and waffles, like this fried fish and waffles. And let me tell you how that shit changed my life. Because it wasn't salt fish, but like the fish was seasoned well enough that it had that rich saltiness, but also that Cajun seasoning on it with the fucking maple. Bro, that shit changed my life for good because I was like, yeah, chicken and waffles, chicken and waffles. And I saw I had options and I was like, well, I gotta try the fish. Like, I can't believe this exists. So I just want to put y'all on for those listening. If you don't know and you do like fish, that's a thing. That's definitely
Mm.
a thing. And so you mentioned coffee. Would you say that that's your favorite brunch drink, or is there something that else that you like to sip on with your brunch?
You know what's crazy? Because LA has all these like extra little offerings, and you know the food is not that well seasoned. Remember, the melanin is all the way on the East Coast. So, not to be like y'all are seasonless, but I do have an extensive drink option that I will have for brunch in LA because you got to fill up somehow.
Yeah.
So they have like blue spirulina lattes and stuff like that. I'm a latte person. I made myself a latte this morning. Sometimes I'll make a lavender latte. Sometimes I'll, you know, just make regular honey, cinnamon. I'll just make it just a usual latte. There's a toasted sesame drink from this place over here by me. So I've been exploring the drinks because I actually gave up having coffee out a couple years ago. I
Mm,
was like, coffee is $7 in Williamsburg.
yeah, too
I'm not
much.
doing it.
Too much. Yeah.
So I'll make my latte at home. But if I go out, I'm open to trying new things. I love trying new things. It's just that coffee is one of my top three things to drink.
That toasted sesame, that sounds hella fire. So tell me, Boo, what was your experience going out to eat when you were growing up?
Food is such a huge part of my culture and my upbringing, like to the point where now as an adult, all of my partners, I feel like my previous partners have all been like, stop asking me if I'm hungry or stop feeding me. Like literally stop feeding me. They're like 15 pounds later, stop feeding me. Like when you come over my house, I'll be like, yeah, are you hungry? Do you want, I can make you. And I realize this is my mother. I am becoming a part of my mother that just can't stop feeding people stuff. Oh, do you want to take some home? Let me pack it up for you. So I would say like going out to eat was a combination of my mother's an excellent cook. She's such a good cook. And bless her heart for being Filipina and asking my granddad, to teach her how to make soul food because she can really throw down. She really can. So I would say food is huge in a sense of we love fine dining. We love any kind of dining. We don't care if it's like a hole in the wall spot, like it doesn't matter. But usually when I go out to eat with my family, like here, like we'll go to Blue Ribbon and we'll just order all our usual things and then we'll try the whatever soup they have, whatever. We just really like great, well seasoned food. And I think that has everything to do with how well of a cook my mother really is, because now if you go out to eat with her she'll be like, man, we could have went to the grocery store and I could have made this better, and she's right.
That's my mom's favorite thing to say. It's actually like going out to eat growing up for me was tough because it was always my mom being Chef Ramsay at the table, having everything to say about everything. And to this day, like special occasions, whatever, we'll be like, yeah, we want to take you to the special place. And she always has her face wound up and she'll taste things
Hmm.
and she'll be like, how much does it cost? I don't know why we're paying so much. This is garbage. Like, it's very, so when my mom does like a restaurant, it is like a shock. But we always come for her because why she love Golden Corral? This woman who has this sophisticated palate loves her some Golden Corral. And I'm like, you know what? I don't even trust you. I don't even trust you no more. So, Boo, tell me, what type of shit do you like to talk at a brunch table?
mm. you know I think I'm pretty guilty of being the person who wants to like hear the tea, you know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, so tell me this and like, I always have questions ready.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's not even like I come prepared with questions. It's just literally like this is the time that we have to not be on our phones and for me to figure out like how's your life been? What are you up to? What's inspiring you right now? So those are the kind of things that I like to talk about brunch. I like to talk about what have you seen? Right now, it's like let's talk about sinners. Let's talk about politics. Let's talk about how we're taking care of ourselves. Let's talk about, like just the mundane things that I feel like really ground us in staying connected.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to move us into our cheers section where we shout out dope people, women, brands, and orgs doing dope shit. I want to shout out Afro Latinx Travel, which is led by Dash Harris Machado and Javier Wallace. They're a group that takes people throughout different countries in Latin America to really dig into Black history in a way that we know damn well school does not bother to teach us. But also, I think it's a different immersive experience because oftentimes we'll be like, read this book, learn about your history. But some people are really just like, physical learners, like they need to touch. I forget what the term is. There's a fancy term for people who need to learn by touch and doing. And I am one of those learners. Like I will read a book, I will study, and I did do a lot of Latina and Black studies in college, but no better teacher has existed for me against any culture more than travel. And so I think it's a wonderful thing. And Dash herself like does a lot of work around talking about Afro Latinidad and really understanding and defining Blackness. And one thing I really, really appreciate about Dash is the way she, without much energy and getting herself emotionally riled up, will point out what is and what is not the tea in the Latina community, including the way people like to claim Blackness, but don't necessarily have a particular proximity to Blackness in which it warrants the way in which they try to co opt that identity and really benefit off of that identity. And I've seen her ruffle some feathers, but I am always here for it. And even as somebody who, like, I'm Black, like, I know I'm Black, but the truth of the matter is that I genuinely, for many years in my life, especially in my youth, assumed that my Blackness as a Dominican was different than Blackness for African Americans and different than Blackness for Jamaicans, because I just at that point didn't really have an understanding of the transatlantic slave trade, of how we made it to these different lands. So I didn't know that there was a connection, but I knew that there was Black. I just thought there were different kinds of Black in the ways that I assumed there's different kinds of white. There's white French people, there's white German, and I'm just a Black Dominican, which is like interesting. And so, like, people like me still have a lot to learn from people like Dash, who, existing in the body that she does have a different Afro experience than some of us do. And so I just wanted to shout Dash out. I think folks should check out this travel group and really consider attending, not just to support the work, but to support yourself and having a true materialized experience, so that you know what you're talking about when you come into these conversations. Because if there's one thing I hate, is reading comment section and seeing how many opinions come about, and it's very clear to me who don't know shit but is still talking shit. Like, if you don't know shit, sometimes you shouldn't be talking shit. Not because your opinion doesn't matter, but there's a difference from saying what you think you know versus asking what you assume to be true. And it'd be wild. But shout out to Dash, because she really holds it down. So, Boo, you tell me, what's your shout out for the week?
Well, I'm so inspired by what you just said. I want to offer a book recommendation by a dear friend, Tao Goff. Her book is Dark Laboratory. It's on Columbus, the Caribbean, and the origins of the climate crisis. I want to shout out Tao because I feel like everything that people that we're looking for within the diaspora, in terms of all of those answers and wondering how were all of these items named, right? It's like, who named this? Probably some white guy. You know what I mean? So, but that's what you can find in the book. So I want to shout her out. I also want to shout out Tyler English Beckwith, whose play I saw last night, and it was incredible. It was called Mingus. She's an African American playwright from Texas, and she's just phenomenal. So we'll look out for that. And then finally, Zoe Martinson's film, The Fisherman, which brought me so much joy and love, and just, it was brilliant. So I'm excited to see that move into theaters.
I met Zoe years ago, at this, like, Kareem Lucas, who is a wonderful artist in our community. I love Kareem.
Kareem.
I love Kareem. And so I got to meet her briefly on a project with Kareem. And so when I did see that you posted about the film, it just made me so happy. It makes me happy to see how the community is still creating things that really feel aligned to them. And I can't wait to check out that film myself. So thank you for shouting that out. So now we are going to move into our Tuta Loca Es section, where we call out people, brands, and organizations that are wilding or doing the most. It's been an interesting couple weeks for Black creatives and the different spaces that we often go to seek a level of validation or recognition for our work, which we absolutely deserve, right? I take no issue with the desire to be platformed, or receive proper recognition. I worry, though, about the ways in which we let a lot of shit slide in an effort to get that recognition. So, when the Academy Awards was like, oh, we're now going to require people to watch the films, I'm like, pause. Now? So what y'all been doing? It like really fucked me up. I don't know how you respond, what your response to that news was, but I was like, are y'all fucking playing me right
Okay,
now?
but what's crazy about it is I've been to the Academy, I've watched films at the Academy, and the thing about the last time I was there, I was one of 3 Black people. One of 3. And we all sat pretty close together, just because we didn't, we didn't plan it, we didn't know each other. But I think that I think what I learned from the experience of being there is just how many white men are the people that are in charge of choosing, what ultimately gets awarded. And I think that's an oversight. That's a huge oversight. But, that same oversight exists in just about every system and institution we have here. So,
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you definitely want to have the rage, but then there's a part of you that's like, man, ain't nothing new here. We already know we have to build our own systems. We already know that the true recognition we deserve, actually, this space can't even hold, right? This space doesn't even actually hold it. And so to hear that, it just kind of blew my mind. And this day and age, I feel like we hear stuff like that and we let it go by the wayside. Like right now, that's old news. That's not new news. But like, I'm not done talking about that. Like, pause. We are talking about decades of people who have put their heart and soul into creation. And also, yes, perhaps wanting that particular recognition. And it just goes to show you, it's kind of like with Forbes and like some of those lists of like, oh, 30 under 30 and whatever. Like people pay to get into those slots. And so I think for me, do what you do. Like, figure out and show up as an institution as you choose, but be real. Stand 10 toes down about what your process really is, and don't fool audiences who then become the people who draw the attention, which also brings in the money, right, to your feet, by making them think that this goes a certain way that it does not. Because then I think a lot of the dialogue around the way people are like, oh, you just want us to support this because it's black, or just because it's black. Like every time I hear that, I'm like, but have you really engaged the work though? Like, let's take race off the table and let's just talk facts. Let's just talk craft, which is why I'm like, sinners, hello, let's just talk craft. Like, we don't got to talk about all of the very important elements of blackness that are in there, but just from a craft perspective, what are you going to take away from this film? Is the blackness what really makes the film, or is the blackness something that, yes, resonates to a community in a particular way because it is that community? Y'all go nuts when you see fucking Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible number God knows which, like as if that was your ancestral representation of everything, and nobody says nothing. As a matter of fact, we go watch that shit too. So
I gotta
like,
come for the Scientologist, though.
you know I just feel like there are certain quintessential action heroes or certain actors who have been a big part of, and not like
Mm,
voluntarily necessarily, but have been a big part of shaping the image that a lot of white audiences get to have about themselves. And a lot of it based and steeped in some deep fiction, especially when we see white characters put into parts of histories that aren't theirs, just to be in the movie, just to push the story forward, but they weren't even there. Or like when you see like certain white samurais and shit like that, it's like, where y'all getting some of this historical context, and you guys get to live and thrive and celebrate in all this fiction. The minute a black or brown body is in a position of fiction or somewhere where you think they're not supposed to be, there's controversy.
mm,
It's just very interesting to me. And so those validation chasers, right, the people who know all of this, the people who could hear all this and say, yes, we agree, however, this is the industry, this is what we need to do. I feel like that's a little crazy. I feel like there has to come a moment where we're willing to separate ourselves from that level of validation, or figure out how to refocus our audience and pivot them in the direction of the integrity that they assume is being held in some of these spaces. I'll even bring up the Met Gala. Is it wonderful that Pharrell was such a big part of that? Is it beautiful to have had the dandy culture represent? Like, all of that is fine and well, and guess what? They had one of the highest grossing Met Gala nights that they've had in years. But do we know if maybe that was exactly why they had us there, and it wasn't about the real honor and respect around that culture and just about making money, right? So, like, does it mean we shouldn't have done it? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying, how are we holding the duality of those truths
mm.
in order to really, really honor the way we model what is true for the audience?
Hmm. Can I offer a couple things on
Absolutely.
that? Like, the first thing I'll offer is that when you're talking about these awards and these systems and, sort of playing the game as an artist, I think it was like last year, somebody nominated me for this award. So they give me the award, or they say, hey, we want to give you this award. And then they're like, fill out this form. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I let my family know, hey, I won this award. I don't know. It's like for being gay and involved in my community. Great. So, and like, I'm just sort of like, all right, oftentimes we apply for things a million times and we just wait our turn because that's just how it goes. I didn't apply for anything. These people reached out to me, right? Look at the form. The form says for a table, I have to pay like over $2,000.
Wow.
And I was like, this is so crazy. So you mean like in order for me to receive this thing, I have to pay for it? So do you know that when you get like a SAG award or you get whatever those statues are, you have to pay for those statues?
Oh, I did not know that.
So, right. And just like your Oscar campaign or whatever, like that, there's a lot of money that's invested in that campaign. So if your team doesn't want to invest in that campaign, then you don't get it. It's just the same as I don't have a PR person. Maybe if I had a PR person, my life would be different. But I think that rather than focusing on that lack, what I do set my sights on is how can I be seen by my Black peers? How can I be seen by the people that actually are on a similar wavelength or want to connect? And I feel like the next thing I wanted to mention is one of my mentors, Tanya Pinkin, shared with me what her mentor and former collaborator George C. Wolfe shared with her, which is that there are people that infiltrate the room, people that feed the room, and people who nurture the room. And you'll fluctuate between all of those in a space. And that is, your collective responsibility, right? To know, all right, everybody here is a mess right now. Maybe they need to go out to brunch. And maybe that will help, create, raise morale, right? So I always think about that because I think we'll get lost in the sauce if we focus on what the masses don't understand. I think it's up to us to leave those love notes. If that means Pharrell, shout out to the Black Apino. If that means that Pharrell has to get in there and, rub elbows with some people and plant some seeds, maybe he's infiltrating the room. I need to give him the permission to do that
Absolutely.
because he has a certain access and influence. So I think that that's how I'm holding the duality. I'm trying to trust that at the end of the day, that little voice in the back of, whoever that person's head is reminds them that like all of this isn't real, but how can you use this to your advantage and to the advantage of our community? And I think that that's how I'm sort of sitting with the grief around these systems aren't going to move. And also, for all intents and purposes, like I don't see people posting about the NAACP awards or the BET awards the same way they post about the Met Gala and the Oscars. So I don't even want to hear the complaints.
Yeah. Boom. You know what? A word. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I think that there is a level of duality that exists. And to your point, I really do hope and trust that the people who are able to infiltrate are keeping the integrity at the forefront. Because at the end of the day, we live in an economy where there needs to be a creator economy within it. And there are things that we do participate in that feel necessary. But when I speak about need, and I just want to surface this just so I don't sound crazy. And what I was saying before is how much are we willing to be steeped in the truth and transparency around what is happening in that space? And knowing that sometimes it can't be public. Like Pharrell might not be able to be on a big news outlet
Right.
saying the Met Gala is bullshit. That doesn't mean that in a room full of his peers or people who matter that he can't be like, yo, we know this is some bullshit. However, here's the strategy, right? And I definitely can empathize that, especially with that, especially as somebody who has worked in many white spaces. You
Yeah.
know?
And I think I messed that up. It's people who blow up the room, people who feed the room, people infiltrate the room. So I think a lot recently about Kaylani.
Yeah, and she's been getting a lot of heat because of her views on Palestine.
I mean, her whole show got canceled.
Mhm.
And it's like this is a risk that you have to take when you speak out. So I think that there's something to be said about when to do so. And I remember being like, oh my God, I admire her so much because she has this huge platform and she's such an amazing musician and she's able to speak about these things and she kind of gives zero fucks. And I love that. And I feel like there are people who are not at that level who are penalized before they even start.
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like you got to get in where you can fit in. Are you going to blow up the room? Are you going to infiltrate the room? Or are you going to nurture the room? And then I feel like that's where you can also look at yourself and say, what privilege and access do I have? Because I might not be able to blow up the room. And that's okay. But I think we have to build trust with each other and say, like, this is what our community needs. And sometimes you got to keep on rising before you can really say what you need to say. Just because I really feel like when you are powerful and when you have something really impactful to say, people will kill you for that.
Yeah, we've seen it time and
Right.
time again throughout history. I mean, I always
Mm.
argue that the reason why it's been hard for us to have an emergence of what feels akin to a civil rights movement and is because we saw what happened not just during the movement but even after it. We saw what happened to the Black Panther Party. Like, we've just seen what dismantling looks like, and when they don't have something to pin where they can legally just shut you down, they will make some shit up, call you a threat, and take you out. And like, no one feels like they're willing to die, which is totally fine. That's not me being like, no one wants to die for this. No, I mean, like, they're killing us already, even involuntarily. So, like, imagine putting yourself at the center of it and knowing that, like, for to your point about the masses, like, they may not get it. So that death might be in vain. Like, it might be in vain. And I think that even the ways in which we still fight to teach people the history around how even Martin Luther King really died, right? Like the fact that we still have to convince people of something that is true, it is crazy to me, which is why for me, I'm just sort of like, y'all sneaky motherfuckers, because you don't make it clear to the audience, the people
Mm-hmm.
again who bring the attention and money to you, what is really happening, so that they can make an informed decision around how they do or don't want to engage your platform. But then who's to say that they would really listen anyway, right? If it was come and there are people like this podcast right now, right? Like, we're saying what it is. There's plenty of people who have said what it is and called out spaces, and it feels like nobody cares, or nobody really believes that source of truth, and they say you're bitter, you're angry, you're just a hater, you don't want to see people having fun and thriving. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just so layered. But it's just interesting because I'm like, how are the validation seekers moving, right? There's a difference between exactly the three categories that you mentioned, and then there's the people who, yes, will use I'm from this background or identity, and they are using it, and it's just as like cruel and deceptive as the platforms that they're seeking validation from. And that particular group of people, that I cannot.
Well, those people, I'm like, my spirit team will take care of that.
Right, right.
Because, I actually just want to add, I don't know if you saw Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest.
Mm-mm.
So this guy, Jonathan, a Jewish man, made this film. He won a huge award for this film, and it was essentially about like a person who worked under Hitler, and like lived, him and his family lived on the other side of Auschwitz. So we're seeing the perspective of the villains in this story, right? October 7th happens. This film is out, it gets all the awards. And what happens? All of these people, after he wins this award and speaks up in support of, in solidarity with the people who are being massacred, right? And there's like a long list of all these people in the industry that are signing this to like cancel this guy. But you know what? He got his award. He made a film that is impeccable. It's like me creating a film, from the perspective of Massa.
Mm.
And in the entire film, you're hearing the soundscape of the genocidal apocalypse that's happening on the other side of a wall. That
Mm.
is the film.
Wow.
And so I look to people, not just in my own cultures, but I look to people in other cultures who are speaking up and who are making it their mission, regardless of, you know what I mean? But again, he infiltrated the room. He created something brilliant. It said what it needed to say. Yes, he got canceled. He'll probably make another film, but he made an enemy out of his community. And I guarantee in 20 years, they'll be singing a new tune. But I'm glad we got that list out so we know exactly who it was.
Period. Period.
You
I love
know?
that. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for those insights. I think they're super important. Okay, so now we're going to move into our plate of the day, um, which is people lacking awareness around privilege. Now, there's this video that has resurged now about this monopoly experiment where one person gets like more money and advantage than the other, and they don't know why. And the way that's decided is by a flip of a coin, right? So nobody gets to choose to be in that position. They just get put in that position, and then they do really crafty things like put a plate of like pretzels on the table. And like, it seems kind of like, well, what does the pretzels have to do with anyone in the position of privilege? But things like the people who had the privilege at some point get really relaxed. They start to be more arrogant. They start to be rude to the person who has less than them, assume superiority, and start to eat more pretzels. That there's this comfort and consumption that starts to happen when they feel like they have so little to worry about that they can be in a position of overconsumption. So that clip is actually an older clip from a TED Talk from 2013. Paul Piff's "Does Money Make You Mean?" is the premise of it, and essentially, spoiler alert, no surprise, it does, right? Having more money shows that people start to lose their connection around compassion, community, cooperation, very key things that people who are in disadvantaged positions, it's almost like we require that in order to survive. We don't know how to exist without those things. In the study, it also shows that when we have economic inequalities, it affects things like social mobility, economic growth, community life, social trust, which is a huge one, right? Because once the trust is destabilized, then it puts everybody in a position of defense in a way, and for some people a position of offense where they're like, well, I'm going to go get mine. And so we see things like rates of imprisonment go up, rates of violence go up, but also things like rates of obesity, drugs, teenage births also came up in the study. It even got down to, there was even a part of the experiment, because the monopoly piece is one piece of many tests that were administered. And one of the tests was seeing how many people in LA would respect the law where you have to stop and let people cross the street. And it found that people who have fancier, expensive cars, 50% of the time did not stop. Like, they did not care about the law. And they had a guy who was like prompt and ready to step out. And 50% of the time, the people almost hit the guy in these fancy cars, but 0% of the time did anyone who was in a car that is not considered a like fancy car in any way, shape, or form, just a regular blue collar car, 100% of the time those people stopped and made sure that the person crossed safely. So it just shows the ways that, yeah, we can talk about greed, but sometimes it really seeps into even the smallest parts of our behaviors that people are unaware of. And, you and I talk about privilege and privileged people and the ways in which they cause just sometimes irreversible harm to communities. And so I wanted to talk about this a little bit more today. And I wanted to start with how we even define lack. So, Boo, how do you define lack, and how does that definition of lack maybe even relate to the idea of lack mentality?
Honestly, I wish I had a really clear answer for this, but I think it's always in exploration. But I think for me, I have always struggled with like equating my value with my net worth. So I think that that's something, and you've heard me say that before. So it's been something that I've been working on in therapy, but it's maddening, right? Because I can't help but have the knowledge and the experience of so much interruption in my process of doing anything. No matter what job I do, no matter what, it's like riding the train. And I know that when it's showtime on the train, I always look to see who pulls out their change. Like, you can be next to somebody who's very rich. That doesn't mean they don't take the train, it's faster. But does that person wearing designer head to toe bring dirty cash? Because that's what it feels like it is for them.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, it just, I don't know. I guess lack for me equates to interruption or systemic erasure, or yeah, it's just not having access. Because I fundamentally believe that every one of us, especially if you're Black, you are always in the motherfucking future because you have to be. Therefore, you cannot tell me, if I will never tell a child you can't do what you set out to do. Because I did a lot of things that I didn't even know I could. And that's without access to sometimes train fare, or sometimes groceries, or sometimes being able to pay my bills, right? And I feel like people don't really think about, most people don't think about how much access you actually have the less melanin you wear, right?
Mm-hmm. And even though we know the majority of the recipients on welfare, for example, are white, right? And that there are a lot of white people who are in poverty and do suffer a lot of these inequalities, that in the right attire and the right setup where that knowledge or that information about their life is not relevant, they then especially still hold the privilege that it doesn't matter how clean cut you could be, Barack Obama, right? Like, and still right, they will still come, and that privilege of whiteness is one thing, and then when you match that with wealth, that then just like creates a completely different recipe. That, hello, look at where we are today as a country, like, and not even just as a country, as a world. But I think that in America it's such an insidious thing, because you can go to other countries and like there are royals, in Dubai, and they're not white men. Like there's so many people
Yeah.
around the world where it's like, oh no, white people aren't the only people in the world with money, let's be clear, because they're not
Yeah.
even necessarily the richest people in the world all the time. There's other forms of wealth and other people who have completely different cultures and have zero interest in leaning into the idea of whiteness as it is defined in America. But for some of those cultures, and I can't speak for everybody, even their relationship with wealth can be different, and sometimes not different, which is, I think, part of the point of this study, right? Because some of the people that they were studying, it wasn't just like, oh, only the white guys are the terrible ones. When even people of color were getting these advantages, it seemed like the separation from the struggles that they once had put them in a position to act brand new. Everybody was acting brand new throughout these studies, no matter where they came from, once they felt the air and the wind beneath their wings that came with this financial privilege. So I'm curious, do you think that excessive wealth can coexist with good? Or are there any examples of that you've seen where you're like,
I think like for a study like that, I'd have to like look at everything, but here's what I do know. I feel like projected in like 2050 or something, the median household income for Black people will be zero.
mm,
Like, and I also, I'm still trying to learn a lot about this, but I come from a political family. So my cousin was the person, Bill Owens, to introduce the reparations bill. He was the first Black senator of Massachusetts to introduce that, and that was years ago. He's gone, but I feel like he's also always in my ear, like, you know. And it's wild that we're still fighting for reparations, or just fighting for equal footing in this country that we built, and we didn't choose to be here. And I feel like the greatest source of lack for us as a community is the fact that they're banning these books and they're banning knowledge. We weren't allowed to read. I come from enslaved people who escaped through the Underground Railroad to freedom. Like, I will always be trying to find the next track. And right now, as it stands, all of this systemic change is just, it's like every single day something is wiped away. Every single day some loophole is created for them to figure out a way to go back to a different form of enslavement. And in the way I think is like that hasn't ended. That's why we have prisons. That's why we have police in schools. Like, You've seen schools in the Bronx. It's like TSA, Harlem TSA.
Yeah.
It is. When you go to
It's not
school,
even
it's
funny.
like,
It's just like, damn, yeah.
but it is. I'm just like, I'm here to teach. And I got like 2 cops on me telling me, where's your parent? Or what class are you trying to go to? And I'm like, dude, I am an adult. And if this is how you treat the children, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I honestly, like, I get the study and I get like Black people can be very rich and also problematic, but at the same time, I'm thinking about the people who have money in my family, and those are the same people that are taking care of multiple family members at the same time. So what does wealth really look like for Black people that have so many people in their family that need help? We
Yeah.
are uninterrupted at every turn. Like, you get into a car accident, you might be on the street the next day because you don't have any savings. You don't have any. I mean, I just.
Yeah. Here's what I will say. Yes, and I think one of the saddest things for me when I was working closely with a billionaire and meeting other Black and Brown, because it's not just exclusive to Black people in any way, shape, or form, even people from India, right? Like,
Mm-hmm,
who we're so rooted in the bootstrap mentality. We're so rooted in this idea that if they could, so could those family members, so could any other people in their community who could use their help. And they were really loud and proud about supporting the ways that, you know, white folks who were of that wealth felt about not needing to really give much, not really needing to invest in things. And it sucks because, you know, as we know across different things, when there's one representative of a community in a space and they say something, there are people who will be like, oh well, I have that one Black person who said this, and so I get to run with my belief. Or like, here's the one my favorite is like when one white person gets told by another Black person that they could say the N word, and they're like, well,
oh,
they don't have a problem with it. It's like, gives me that vibe, you know what
yeah.
I mean? And so like having that experience over and over again, it really put me in a position to think about, whoa, like what happens to wealth and can it coexist with good? And to me, I think the key differentiator, and I think this speaks to what you are speaking about, is people who have had a catalytic experience or exposure to things that makes it difficult for the money to separate them from their values or their deep beliefs around community and the ways in which people need to be uplifted. So like I would say, can wealth coexist with good? Yeah, absolutely. But whose wealth and how are they rooted in abundance, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people might look at an MC Hammer and say, see, you could end up like Hammer if you give too much. And they'll take an example like that. But they won't also say, well, what does it look like when, yeah, you might not have the same financial literacy. And so the goodness of your heart might then bite you in the ass later. But that's not because the goodness in your heart is not the right approach. It's because there needs to be tact and strategy around what that looks like. And so sometimes there are a lot of Black and Brown people of wealth who are tactful with their money. And quickly people will say, you don't want to give to your community. Oh, you're cheap. Oh, you're this. Meanwhile, you don't actually know what's happening behind the scenes and how
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to make this stretch, right? To make sure that I'm not just helping out one time, that I'm actually building a generational capability of giving, right? And so I wonder for you, like, what advice might you give to anyone who is struggling with resources, whether that is wealth or just lack of privilege? Like, how do you keep yourself grounded and motivated? Any techniques that you use or recommend? Any and all things.
My technique is calling my aunts at least once a week. My technique is being in community with people who inspire me, and actually being in community with people who are also Black artists, or they don't even have to be artists. I have a lot of friends of all faiths, of all racial backgrounds, and everybody is self-made. There's a certain amount of like grit, and there's a certain amount of like knowing and respect between us. I don't know, there's something about being in the company of people who are like, I don't give a fuck what they say. For me, wealth is in community.
Mhm. Yeah.
I really do. Like, I feel like, when am I not fed when I'm in the company of people that I love and trust and that inspire me? And I feel like that wealth, I should also say, I'm not like a crabs in the bucket person, but there are a lot of people that are like that. And I feel like there's an assumption that most people are going to be like that. Sure. But what would happen if we allowed ourselves to be inspired by each other? Because to me, that's the biggest source of lack in my Black artistic community is, not having healthy competition, having it's me versus you. It's like, nah, we need everybody's brilliant voice. We need all of the brilliant people to coexist and lift each other up. That's how we raise capital. That's how we raise, if you want to be a Black capitalist, like that is how, do you know what I'm saying? Like it's a spiritual synergy. I just honestly, maybe I've just been in this place of like, I'm not going to let this system get me down. And what makes me feel alive and what makes me feel connected is when I'm in the company of people who can see beyond what is tangible. That's spiritual. And that happens that's that thing that you feel when we're all, like in our own private space, or we've just seen something great, or we're able to celebrate each other. It's like going to somebody's graduation. It's like, oh, you worked so hard. So I think for me, it's about letting other people inspire me, encouraging other people to do what they are meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I sit up here and think, well, this person got it and I didn't get it, so blah 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 blah, and it's like, that's not, no. This is why we can look back and see Nikki Giovanni and Baldwin sit and rap about it. What happened to us being able to sit and rap about it? We need to, in this moment, we need to be in community, shifting and changing each other. That is something that they've never been able to figure out.
I have a huge smile on my face, mostly because like when part of what gave me that the extra push to bring the podcast back outside of the conversation that we had in the car, which was quite lovely, was like I came across a clip from that Nikki Giovanni Baldwin
Mm,
conversation again because I'd seen
mm,
many times, but I saw it and I said, you know what? Think big, bitch. Think big. Like you need to have these conversations with these people just because at any moment in time there are going to be gems that somebody is going to look back to and need in the same ways that over and over again, no matter how many times you've seen these clips, every time it comes across at the right time, you feel inspired and moved to get back up on your feet and really live your life in a particular way or really stand 10 toes down on something that you believe. And so, yes, we do need to be having these conversations. We do need to be in community more, and community also begets resources, right? Like I might know about something that you don't know, but if we can't be in community with each other around our needs, then I might not know how to help you. And sometimes it is more than just like, oh, I want to be around Black or brown people. And it's like, yes, but if we're around each other, we're still not in the honesty of where we're at and what we need, then we still might not be helping each other in the ways that we can most help, even though being in space with each other is helpful to one level. But the levels of community support, I think separation, the integration of communities to the degree that people don't even know their neighbors anymore.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that separate us that now we feel less inclined to be in community in that way. And that's super important. And one more thing that I want to throw in there is, so before this conversation, I pulled some animal medicine cards and we got the fox and the squirrel, which are right here behind me. And I pull these cards just to say, okay, what is some of the medicine or intention around this conversation today? And I just want to show you how in alignment what you're saying is. So Fox medicine talks a lot about adaptability, observation, integration, and swiftness of thought and action, right? Like,
Mm.
being in the grass, camouflaging in the ways that you need to, but also taking in that knowledge and really observing to strike when the time is right, so that when you strike swiftly and quickly without overthinking anything. And the squirrel medicine comes in to talk about gathering, right? And not gathering just in the sense of gathering with your people, but in terms of storing, but not just storing your resources, but storing your energy, right? In times of needs, right? And also reserving your energy means reserving judgment or opinions around certain things that don't really need your energy more than you need to focus on what you need to harvest to survive the seasons that you are about to be in or are already in. And so it's honoring your future and readying yourself for inevitable change, and lightening your load from things that do not deserve you or serve you anymore, but also finding a place and a temple, if you will, to really hold the things that you have gathered, whether that's material or otherwise. And so I want to say to folks who are struggling, like, your body is your temple. And so in moments and times where everything else seems like too much or too much of a reach for you to show up for yourself. Like, being grounded is so important. Our nervous systems are not designed to be taking all of this abuse as we do and to be consuming all this news as we do. And so really grounding yourself and gathering and storing, but also being like the fox and observing and recognizing, when is my time to speak up? When is my time to act? I think the example with Kaylani was super important, right? Like, am I the one who can be the sacrificial lamb right now, or can I not? And how do I heal myself from any guilt, but also prepare myself for the time where it will be my turn and I will have the opportunity to show up for something, whether that is change for the world or just change for myself in my own personal life. So I just want to thank you, Boo, for this conversation. As we close, tell me, any special shout outs? Where can we follow you and your work and continue to uplift and support you?
I'm on socials sometimes. Carmen LoBue. That's my handle, or Carmen LoBue on TikTok. Yeah, I guess I'll be around, but I'm better in person.
Great. So we
Yeah.
be in community with Boo. And so tell us, what kind of people do you like to be in community with? Because I don't want people chasing after you and you're gonna have to be like, hold up, you ain't my community.
I'm just so inspired and still taking in what you said about the Fox energy. And I'm thinking about Kendrick,
Mm,
who like mastered that. You know what I mean? Like, I think we are all prophets, but I'm trying to be in community with people who love to talk about God. And I want to be in community with people who encourage their friends and their family to practice self compassion and to hold space for those who don't know how to ground themselves, or to, like, all of the things that you said in terms of self care. Like, I'm trying to be in community with people who are curious and people who, even if they aren't informed, they want to be informed and they make that a practice. So yeah, like people who are into loving kindness. I have a wide array of like just different types of people in my life. Um, so I'd like to keep that going, but specifically with people who love mystic crazy talk. That's my shit.
love that. I love that. We love the mystic and crazy over here at Bronche. You can follow us at Ladies Who Bronché across platforms and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. And until next time, Bronche.